Everything changed in a matter of seconds. I mean, think about it. A franchise that had literally been wandering in the wilderness, largely viewed by the rest of the league as an afterthought, suddenly found its footing. With the arrival of a rookie phenom quarterback and an absolutely visionary head coach, the window for a championship isn't just open, it has been violently kicked off its hinges. Welcome to NFL Nexus. I'm your host, and today we are breaking down a developing, high-stakes situation in Houston that could alter the landscape of the entire NFL season. Before we really get going here, if you want the most in-depth, uncompromising analysis in football, you need to subscribe to the channel right now, like this explainer, and comment below on what you thought of today's deep dive. And listen, if you truly want to support the channel and gain access to exclusive content, consider becoming a channel member. Okay, let's dive into this, because the Houston Texans are playing a very, very dangerous game right now. They are operating with a relentless win-now mentality. They are fully aware of the sheer, unprecedented power of having an elite quarterback on a rookie contract. Every single move, every transaction, every whisper leaking out of that front office screams one thing: Super Bowl. But beneath the surface of this newly built juggernaut lies a singular, terrifying vulnerability. A gamble so profound, so incredibly risky, it could be the very thing that brings this entire championship operation crashing to the ground.
A Super Bowl roster is only as strong as its weakest link. I want you to really sit with that sentence for a moment. Just let it sink in. Think about the history of this league. We have seen historically dominant offenses, absolute juggernauts, brought to their knees because of one single vulnerability. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl LV. You remember that game? An otherwise unstoppable machine was totally derailed because injuries forced backup tackles onto the field, leaving their superstar quarterback literally running for his life on every single snap. We have seen terrifying defenses shredded in the playoffs because of one inexperienced defensive back. In the National Football League, you have to understand, opposing coordinators are like apex predators. They do not attack your strengths. They probe, they scan, and they ruthlessly exploit your weakest link. You can build a Ferrari of a football team, but if you forget to put air in just one of the tires, you aren't crossing the finish line. The Houston Texans have spent the last several months building an absolute machine, but as we are about to see, they may have left one critical component entirely exposed to the elements.
And you really have to give them credit for what they've done so far. The Texans front office has been surgical in their approach to this offseason. I mean, they have been diligent. They have been immensely, incredibly aggressive. They looked at the running back room and demanded an immediate upgrade, bringing in top-tier veteran talent to solidify the ground game and take the pressure off their young quarterback. They looked at the offensive line and fortified it, knowing that protecting their franchise guy is the single most paramount task in football. You just can't win without it. Then, they looked at the defensive interior and injected it with raw, unadulterated strength. They didn't just casually participate in free agency, they attacked it with a mandate. They are not remaining complacent with a feel-good division title. The goal is no longer just making a polite exit in the divisional round. The goal, explicitly and undeniably, is Super Bowl contention. They have constructed what looks, on paper anyway, like an almost invincible behemoth. They are plugging holes on both sides of the ball, with the kind of urgency you only ever see from a franchise that knows its championship window is completely, undeniably open right now.
Section 2. The Elite Edge Duo, Setting the Standard. Let's look at the front line.
Because in the modern NFL, which has undeniably evolved into a hyper-fast passing league, the most valuable commodity a defense can possess is absolute, sheer terror on the edges. You absolutely must be able to hunt the quarterback. And Houston possesses undisputed heavyweight star power at the very top of their depth chart. On one side, you have Will Anderson, a top 10, once-in-a-generation talent, a player who erupted onto the scene to win Defensive Rookie of the Year, bringing a violently disruptive energy and a staggering pressure rate to the edge. The guy is a game wrecker. On the other side, you have Daniel Hunter, an elite, seasoned veteran coming off a massive 16.5 sack season, a cold-blooded producer who understands the biomechanics of pass rushing better than almost anyone else in the league. Together, they form a terrifying two-headed monster. And beyond just their physical production on the turf, they serve as the foundational mentors for the entire locker room. They set the standard. They are the alpha predators. When these two are on the field, the Houston defense is an absolute nightmare to block. It is a premium, top-tier pairing that gives the Texans a distinct mathematical and physical advantage over almost any offensive tackle duo they will ever face.
But who steps up when the stars step off? This right here. This is the hidden vulnerability. This is the crack in the foundation that nobody is talking about enough. Football is a game of attrition. It's a game of exhaustion, of lactic acid building up in the muscles until a player's legs feel like they are made of solid concrete. Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter are spectacular generational talents, but they are human. They will get tired. They will need a breather after a grueling physical 9-play drive. They will need to stand on the sidelines, grab a tablet, and take in oxygen.
And when they step off that field, who exactly is stepping on?
The edge rusher depth remains dangerously untouched. This is the biological and tactical reality the Texans are facing as we inch closer and closer to the season. The front office, which was so perfectly surgical in upgrading the running backs, the offensive line, and the interior defensive line, somehow left the edge rusher room behind these two stars completely unaddressed. It is a glaring, almost unbelievable omission. For all the immense talent Houston hosts, historical data shows us that edge rushers begin to lose their critical fast-twitch explosiveness if they cross the 75% snap share threshold. That means for 25% of the game, upwards of 15 to 20 crucial, game-deciding snaps, the backups are on the field. Even elite players like Anderson and Hunter cannot physically play every single defensive snap. If you force them to play 70 snaps a game in the sweltering Texas heat, or deep into the grueling winter months of a physical playoff run, you are going to break them. They will lose their explosiveness, or worse, they will suffer a catastrophic injury. Depth is not a luxury in the National Football League. It is a biological necessity. And right now, for Houston, that depth is dangerously thin.
The depth dilemma here is frankly staggering. Just look at the comparison. Last season, the Texans relied heavily on players like Danico Autry and Derek Barnett, battle-tested, reliable veterans. They were guys you could sub into the game in the fourth quarter of a tight, one-score matchup, and you knew exactly what you were going to get. They wouldn't make catastrophic mental mistakes, they could hold the edge against the run, they could generate meaningful pocket-collapsing pressure. But Houston cut ties with those veterans in free agency, replacing them with unproven names like Dylan Horton, Dominique Robinson, Ali Guy, and Sebastian Harsh. These are developmental prospects. They have virtually zero meaningful playoff snaps on their resumes. They have not been tested in the absolute fires of a deep postseason run against elite AFC quarterbacks. The drop-off in proven, reliable production from the veterans who departed to the unproven youth expected to take their place is a cliff. It's a straight drop down. The Texans essentially let go of their safety nets and replaced them with massive, glaring question marks.
To truly understand the gravity of this situation, we really need to define exactly what is missing here. A rotational piece is not just a warm body you throw onto the field to eat up the clock while the starters get a drink of water. A true rotational piece is a highly specialized player who enters the game to rest a starter, maintaining defensive pressure without a severe drop-off in production. When a rotational piece enters the game, the opposing quarterback shouldn't suddenly feel a sense of relief. The pocket should still collapse. The pressure should still be relentless. Think about the historic 2022 Philadelphia Eagles defense. They generated a record number of sacks entirely because they had waves and waves of rotational edge rushers, keeping the pressure lethal for all four quarters. It was a conveyor belt of nightmares for opposing offenses. By failing to replace their departed veterans with proven talent, the front office is gambling that one of these unproven young players can suddenly, miraculously become a high-level rotational piece on a team with Super Bowl aspirations. That is a massive, massive gamble.
The parameters of this development gamble are crystal clear. The front office cut ties with reliable veterans. That was a calculated, deliberate choice. Then, they made absolutely no effort to sign veteran replacements in the early waves of free agency. That was also a choice. It is a very loud statement from the front office. They are betting their chips entirely on in-house development. They are looking at their young prospects and saying, "We believe we can mold you into championship-caliber contributors." Their ultimate hope is that by simply sharing a locker room, a meeting room, and a practice field with Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, these young players will magically absorb their guidance, their insane work ethic, and their flawless technique. It is a philosophy built entirely on faith. Faith in their coaching staff and faith in the osmosis of greatness. But in the National Football League, you and I both know this strategy rarely works overnight. You cannot just absorb a devastating pass rush move through a locker room whiteboard. Faith does not sack Patrick Mahomes on 3rd and long.
So, what happens if the depth doesn't emerge? I want you to really picture the scenario. It's late December. The playoffs are looming. The tension is palpable. The Texans are locked in a brutal, physical game against a top-tier AFC rival. It is 3rd and 8 in the fourth quarter. Will Anderson is totally gassed. Danielle Hunter tweaks a hamstring and needs to sit out a crucial series. The defense looks down the sideline, and all they have are unproven developmental players who haven't been able to put it all together. The elite offensive line across from them realizes the premier edge rushers are gone. The opposing quarterback smiles. What happens to the Super Bowl aspiring defense when the backups are forced into the unforgiving spotlight, and that spotlight proves to be entirely too bright?
If that nightmare scenario starts to look like a reality during the dog days of summer, the Texans will be forced into a late camp contingency plan. If none of these young options manage to emerge as a solid, reliable third edge rusher, the front office cannot just ignore it. They will be forced to scour the free agent market deep into training camp. And let me tell you, when you are shopping for an edge rusher in late August, you are sifting through the scrap heap. You are looking at aging veterans who have lost a step, players coming off severe Achilles or knee injuries, or guys who are unceremoniously cut from other 53-man rosters. History tells us that relying on an emergency, late August street free agent to salvage the defensive line rotation of a Super Bowl contender is a terrifying position for a general manager to be in. It is a total recipe for disaster.
Section 3. The Training Camp Test. Coach Ryan's Perspective. Let's hear from the man himself.
Outside the building, analysts and observers are raising their eyebrows and sounding the alarm about this terrifying lack of depth. But inside the building, the tone is entirely different. There is a stark, almost jarring contrast between the external panic and the internal calm projected by the man in charge. Listen to the unwavering confidence of head coach DeMeco Ryans during the team's mandatory minicamp. He said, "We're excited about the D-line that we have. We'll continue to roll our guys as much as possible. That's how we operate. We really want 8-9 guys who can go out there and play in a rotation." He isn't flinching, he isn't sweating, he isn't making excuses for the front office. He is looking at this roster, at those exact unproven names we just discussed, and he is publicly stating that he is excited. He is fully committing to the philosophy of heavily rotating his defensive line to keep them fresh. But the underlying numbers of what he is saying tell a highly daunting story. Because to execute that philosophy, you need a specific number of players who can actually perform at a high level.
8 to 9. That is the magic number DeMeco Ryans insists he needs to make this defense function at a championship level. 8 or 9 defensive linemen who can hold down the fort. Think about the unforgiving math here. You have your 4 primary starters across the line, including Anderson and Hunter. To get to 8 or 9 guys you actually trust in a playoff game, you need 4 to 5 backups who are ready for prime time. You need almost every single one of those unproven developmental edge rushers to hit their absolute ceiling simultaneously. Ryans is banking on finding those 8 to 9 players from a pool of talent that, quite frankly, hasn't given the rest of the league much reason to be terrified. The odds of all these young players breaking out at the exact same time, in the exact same season, are astronomically low. It is a massive, arguably unprecedented coaching challenge to get all these guys playoff ready.
And honestly, Ryans knows this. He continued his thought by saying, "We're still figuring out who those 8 or 9 guys will be. It'll be really tough competition in training camp that I'm excited to see, excited to really see our young guys in the interior to see how they perform in camp." While the head coach projects absolute calm to the media in minicamp shorts and t-shirts, he is fully aware that the true test hasn't happened yet. The real answers won't come from a whiteboard session. They won't come from unpadded slow-motion walkthroughs. They will only come when the pads finally clash in the brutal, sweltering heat of training camp, when these young edge rushers have to actually prove they can consistently beat an NFL offensive tackle in a live, violent, high-stakes drill.
Which brings us to the ultimate showdown here: confidence versus reality on the gridiron. It is very, very easy to be confident in June. It is easy to look at raw athletic potential and dream about what it could become. But verbal confidence must translate to tangible, violent production on the field before the season actually starts. DeMeco Ryans' belief in his developmental players is commendable, but until that belief results in blown-up running plays and actual sacks during the preseason, it's totally fair for everyone on the outside to heavily temper their expectations. The reality of the gridiron is unforgiving. It doesn't care about your in-house development strategy. It doesn't care about your locker room culture. It only cares if you can physically get to the quarterback when the game is on the line.
So we are left with the defining question of the Houston Texans' entire offseason. Will this massive developmental gamble actually pay off, miraculously turning unproven youth into championship rotational pieces? Or will a sudden glaring lack of edge rusher depth be the Achilles heel that cost this juggernaut a Super Bowl ring? Training camp is going to provide the answer, and it is going to be ruthless. Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive explainer. If you appreciate this level of detailed cinematic breakdown, you have to make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment on what you thought below. Seriously, let me know if you think the Texans need to panic and sign a veteran edge rusher right now. And remember, you can directly support what we do here by becoming a channel member. I'm your host for NFL Nexus, and until next time, keep your eyes on the trenches.